When you're buying a power rack, there's one very important question that you're going to need to answer, and a lot of us answer it without even thinking about it. And that question is, should you buy a rack that's naked or fully clothed? Welcome back to the GymCrafter podcast. My name is Tim. I'm the head gym nerd here at GymCrafter.com, the website that I built to help ordinary folks like you and I build home and garage gyms that we absolutely love. And I have got a great episode for you guys today. I'm really looking forward to it. One of the reasons I've been doing a series on buying racks, and this is another episode in that series, is that I am buying a rack for the gym. And as I get to the end of testing these multifunction systems that I have in the gym now, I've got the RitFit M1, I've got the Major Fitness B52, and I've got a weight stack coming for the B52, so that should be interesting. I won't have to do plate loaded stuff anymore, but as I come to the end, the last few months of training these things, I'm getting more and more excited about buying the rack that I want for the gym, because I'm gonna sell all this stuff and replace it with what I want. And what I want is some type of a power rack, some type of a cable system. I don't know if I'm gonna get a Smith machine, but as I'm thinking through all of that, I'm realizing that there's a lot that goes into buying a rack. And one of the things that I realized recently is that there are 4 basic types of setups you could have in your gym. And that's what I want to talk about today, is those 4 basic types of setups. And in order to get to that question, which is at the end of the episode, we're going to lay some groundwork. And before we lay the groundwork, make sure you like the episode, make sure you subscribe to the channel, share this episode with other people if you're interested or you think they're interested, and all of that stuff, which helps you out, which helps me out, which helps your friends out. And once you do that, we can get into the episode. So as I start all of my episodes, at least when I remember to, I owe you guys a gym update. And for those of you who follow on Instagram, I owe you a bunch of updates. I've got probably 4 or 5 different reels that I need to shoot to go over everything I'm gonna review right now. But as you can see behind me, I have gotten a lot done with the gym renovation lately. I'm super happy with how it's coming out. And the first thing you see behind me is the barbell wall, which you saw last episode, now has the lighting that I wanted on it. I installed a neon strip across the top. I put a piece of angled aluminum over it, painted the aluminum to match the gym. It shines everything down on the barbells. It looks really cool, especially if I turn off a couple of the overhead lights. It matches the lighting around the baseboard, which you can see behind me. I took and I painted the edges of all the wood so that it looks nice and finished. I also finished the front of the wall in front of the dumbbells over here. So everything's really clean. All of my stuff is now behind this wall. I don't have to look at it anymore. Another thing that I'm super happy about is I finished my stereo installation. 250 feet of speaker wire later, I've got 4 speakers up, 1 in each corner of the garage. It is total overkill. And it is awesome. I love it. I'm sure my neighbor is going to come knocking on my garage door at some point soon, but I have been training with some exceptionally loud music. If you want to know what kind of music I'm listening to, I typically post what I'm listening to on my story every day on Instagram. So if you want to follow along or maybe get some idea of some new music that you can listen to or train to, check that out over there. But the music is great. I did all the cable management so you don't see any of those wires. That's why I use so much speaker wire. The receiver's right up here, as you can see, so it's right out in the open. All of the lights go on when I turn the receiver on. It's really cool. I'm really, really happy with how it came out. In addition to the speaker wire, I did all of the power management. So I now have a power strip up in the shelves back here. I also have a power strip up against the wall towards the other side of the gym. So all of my stuff is plugged in. All the cords are out of the way. I'm done tripping over things, and I know you guys have heard me complain about that a few times. All of that stuff is done. So there's a few little odds and ends to do, and I'm gonna shoot a couple of videos coming up. I'm probably gonna shoot a gym renovation video. There's a few more things I'm gonna do in the gym here, and I wanna wait till it's all done to give you guys the tour so you can see the complete final product. The only thing you won't see is there's some cool stuff that's gonna be going up on the walls, but that's a project for a future date, which I'm also excited to share with you guys. But I'm gonna shoot that at some point. But before then, I'm gonna shoot 2 videos on the barbell wall. I've had a lot of you guys ask me how I built it, and it's a really cool solution. I love how it came out. It really allowed me to get all of my garage stuff out of the way. It not only is a great place to store the bars, it looks great, but it allowed me to get all of my junk out of the garage so that I have more room for gear, which is what we all want, right? We all want more gear. So this is a great way to do that. So I'll film a video on that. And then I'm also going to shoot a video on what bars are up on the wall. There's bars up there for me that I use all the time. There's bars up there for the folks that I train. So I want to kind of walk you through. I've got a ton of bars in the house. This isn't all of them by far, but these are the ones that get used, and I want to walk you guys through. So if you're looking for a bar for your house, it'll give a good example of some different specialty bars and things like that that I'm really liking and that I use all the time. And now I've got all the cords out of the way, I can actually use them. So it's been really cool. Really love how it worked out. And one of the benefits of putting all this work in, if you decide to go to the effort as well, is it really makes you want to come into your gym. And I've gone through a lot, as you guys have followed along in this podcast series, renovating the gym, and all of that work is finally coming together, and I really, really look forward to coming into the gym. What's gonna make me look forward even more to coming into the gym is having racks that I want and not racks that I'm testing for other people. So let's get to that topic today, which is how to pick out a rack setup for your gym and just some general things to think about. So as I started the episode, the question of this episode is, do you want a naked rack or a fully clothed power rack? And what I mean by that is, when you're buying a rack for your gym, do you want to buy just a straight power rack and then add on to it over time or have additional machines in addition to it? Or do you want to buy something like one of these multifunction units that I've been testing lately, like this RipFit M1 over here, or the Major Fitness B52, which is behind you, or behind the camera. I don't know if it's behind you or not. Which of those options do you want to go with? So I want to kind of talk about today some of the pros and cons of each of those options, so hopefully help you walk through what you want to do both in the short term and the long term with your gym, because these are really the foundation of your gym. This is the centerpiece of your gym, and if you do this right, you're going to be able to grow down the road, or you're going to be able to just knock everything out at once and just take care of it because you don't want to grow down the road. And that's what I want to help you think through today. So in order to do that, we need to start with something that a lot of us don't think about, which is a lot of people, when they buy gear for their gym, and I've helped a ton of people through GymCrafter build home gyms, and this is very common. People come and they want to be able to do certain exercises. I can't tell you the number of guys who have come to me and said, okay, I know I want a preacher curl bench. And it's like, that's before we talked about bars or squat racks or flooring, and they're like, I want a preacher curl bench, right? I've got a lot of people go, I want to have a leg press machine in my garage. And it's like, okay, well, those are specific exercises. And while the type of training that you do might warrant buying equipment for specific exercises, you know, bodybuilding is a great example of that, right? People who train for bodybuilding or train for physique competitions, they need to be able to do very specific exercises because they're working on their physique in a very concentrated way. They want to focus on specific muscles in their body, and in order to do that, they need to perform very specific exercises. And while that's important to be able to do if you're training that way, that's not how we build a gym. That's actually how you finish your gym. The way that we build a gym is we want to focus first on the 6, or some people say 7, but 6 foundational human movement patterns that we all perform in regular life. And if you can train those 6 patterns, then you can get very strong, you can get as big as you can get as strong as you can develop as much power as you can, and you can really do everything that you want if you focus on starting there. Once you're able to train those foundational movement patterns, you can then move on to adding specific exercises. And that means that we need to start with something that's very versatile, and that's why we almost always start with some type of a rack, because a rack is going to allow you to train those foundational movement patterns. Strongman training is another one that comes to mind. Those guys train, when they train, even bodybuilders, when those two groups train, the basis, the foundation of their training are these 6 foundational movement patterns. After that, strongmen add logs for log lifts, or they add sandbags for those types, or they add yokes. There's specific things for their sport that they need to add, but they always start with the foundational movement patterns. So, what are these foundational movement patterns? They're push, pull, squat, hinge, lunge, and carry. And a lot of people like to, and I'm one of these people, like to throw in rotate, although some of your higher end coaches in the world don't, because they'll tell you that rotation can be part of those other movement patterns. But those are your 6 or 7 foundational movement patterns. You want to be able to train those 6 things. If you can train those 6 things, you're good, right? And there's a million different ways to train those different movement patterns. And by looking at it this way, it allows you not to get stuck on training certain exercises. This is for people who get stuck on, well, I want a Smith machine or I want a cable machine. And those things are both good things to have. But when you find out that they want those things because they want to do this specific exercise that they've got, like a lot of guys, they want to be able to do cable crossovers. There are tons and tons of ways to train your chest without cable crossovers. It's the push pattern, right? And if you can train your push pattern in a million different, you can do push-ups, you can do bench press, you can do all kinds of stuff without having a cable crossover. But when people get stuck on having a cable crossover, then sometimes they either spend too much of their money on that cable crossover, or they go cheap just to have one and then they get a crappy cable crossover, or they buy one of those things and then they don't have things outside of that allow them to do the other important movements. So it's important to start with the movement patterns and not the exercises. You can add the exercises later. And when you build your gym to work those foundational movement patterns, you've got a couple of choices of what to go with as far as a rack. Your two basic choices of rack are, like I said in the intro, you can go with just a naked power rack. 4 posts, some safeties, some J-hooks, a bench, a barbell, some weights, and away you go. People have been training like this for decades, and it's a very effective way to train, and you can absolutely train all of those foundational movement patterns with just a naked rack. The multifunction trainers, like I have in the gym right now, those also allow you to train the 6 foundational movement patterns, but people look at those and they perceive some benefits. So let me talk about the perceived benefits of these multifunction trainers. And some of them are actual benefits and some of them, not so much. One benefit of these multifunction machines is that they allow you to do accessory work better. Accessory work are the smaller lifts that go around those bigger lifts. So for example, if you're training the squat movement pattern, you can do that with a barbell back squat, a front squat. There's lots of different ways to train the squat with a basic power rack. But if you want to do leg curls or leg extensions or sometimes calf raises, a lot of times you'll need additional pieces of equipment to do those things, and these multifunction racks allow you to do that accessory work easier. You don't have to buy stuff outside of the power rack to do that. Another benefit of these multifunction units is it's easier to get in volume. More and more studies are coming out showing that growth in both strength and size comes from volume, right? You have to do a certain amount of volume in order to do that. And what happens is when you're trying to work, let's say you're trying to work your back. Well, if you just have a straight power rack and you're doing bent over rows, for example, the weak point in that kinetic chain is your lower back, your ability to brace, somewhere in your torso. It's not your back, right? So a lot of times you can't get the volume in that you want because the rest of you is wearing out. Whereas if you have a multifunction trainer like this with a cable system, it allows you to sit down, do some low rows with some heavy weight, or even some medium or light weight, and get in a ton of volume without causing undue stress on the rest of your stabilizing muscles of the rest of your body. So these multifunction trainers allow you to do a lot more volume than you would with just a straight barbell setup. Another thing that they allow you to do, and I'm not sure that this is a benefit, but I think a lot of people think it is, which is a Smith machine specifically allows you to do a lot higher weight. So you can squat a higher number on a Smith machine than you can with just a straight barbell. And the reason for that is when you're squatting with just a barbell on your back, that's a full body exercise, right? For those of you who squat a lot, squatting is a full body exercise. It requires strength in every muscle in your body in order to complete it, especially once you get up to higher numbers. A lot of the times the weak point in that chain isn't your legs, right? It's your lats for bracing sometimes. It's weird, but that sometimes is what it is. So with a Smith machine, you're really isolating just your legs, and all of those stabilizer muscles don't really have to do much because the bar is stabilized by the rack. So a multifunction rack allows you to lift more weight. Also, speaking of squatting on a Smith machine, it's a lot quicker to set up, right? It's already set, you slap some weights on the side, you unhook the thing and you squat, whereas on a rack, you've got to set the J-hooks, you've got to set the safeties, you've got to get your barbell off the barbell wall, and then you got to get your plates out, put those on. So sometimes it's a lot quicker to do it. So I know a lot of guys who have Smith machines who like them because they can just come in, pop some weights on and get the exercise done and move on with their day. It's a lot quicker in and out. So that's another benefit of these all-in-one machines. Speaking of quicker, it's a quicker learning curve as well. I've found training people that it's a lot easier for me to teach somebody to squat if we start on the Smith machine so they can learn to feel what a straight bar path feels like. And then we can move outside the rack. And once they know what the feels like, they know that the movement starts with their hips and not their knees. There's a bunch of little coaching cues that are very easy to get down on a Smith machine before we move out under a bar. If I start them under a bar, we've got to start with basically an empty bar and just work on the patterns. It's a lot longer learning curve. And that's true of a lot of exercises is when you have these multifunction machines, the learning curve is a lot quicker. Also, the perception is, and I don't know that this is true or not, but actually I don't think it is true personally, but a lot of people would argue otherwise, is that multifunction machines appear to be safer. People feel a little bit more comfortable pulling on a cable that's not going to drop on their foot, or working on a Smith machine where they can just set that spring safety or just twist their wrist if they get in trouble. They know the bar is not going to go flying anywhere. The bar is not going to tip, and if they didn't put collars on, the weights aren't going to come off the end. There's all kinds of ways that people feel safer, and if you feel safer, you're going to be more consistent, you're going to work out more often, and you're going to get better results, which is a good thing, right? So that's another benefit of these multifunction machines, is that people feel safer using these than they do just a standard power rack. These multifunction units are often less expensive, although they can be more expensive. Typically your price on these guys is going to be anywhere from right around $1,000. This RipFit M1 is on sale right now for like $899, which is a tremendous deal. I'll put a link down below so that you can check that out. But typically you're going to spend about $1,000, $1,500, and then the nice ones, the good ones, are like $5,500. So there's a huge range there. I'm actually going to be shooting some stuff for Force USA really soon. I'm going to be able to bring you a really good detailed overview of 3 of their multifunction units, which are a big step up from what I've been showing you lately. So hopefully that for those of you who want to do something a little nicer, that's going to be an option for you. But in the end, when you look at buying an all-in-one, you can be all in one of these and have a lot more movements than just a straight squat rack, and do it at a lower price, because by the time you buy a squat rack and then you add on a cable machine and then you add on a Smith machine and then you can really jack up the price that way. So you can be less expensive on a multifunction unit. Also, because everything is all in one cage, it takes up less space than going with just a traditional power rack and then maybe going with some machines outside of that. So those are the benefits, and that's a lot of benefits, and you can see why these are popular. The fitness companies that I talk to who sell both an all-in-one as well as just standard racks and things like that tell me that these all-in-one trainer units sell at a 10-to-1 ratio over standard squat racks. And when I first learned that, it really surprised me and I was kind of doubtful, but I've had enough different companies tell me that, or a number similar to that, to where with all those benefits I just listed, I can understand why that is. So you might think, okay, with all those benefits, why not just do this, right? And if you were at Home GymCon last year, you might start to think that as well, because there were a ton of companies that seemed to be the thing, is how much stuff can we stick into your squat rack, right? Like the number of Smith machine add-ons to standard squat racks that are coming out now is crazy. The number of ways to put on cable systems onto standard squat racks is just going through the roof. So it seems like the thing to do now is to cram a bunch of stuff onto your squat rack. So that definitely seems like a good option. But let's talk about the pros of just going with a standard, naked, plain, 4-post squat rack, or even a 6-post squat rack, nothing fancy, no cables, no Smith machines, nothing like, but starting your gym with just a naked rack. And number one is a personal thing, but I think a lot of you guys out there might agree. Learning to use a barbell is a beautiful way to train. It's my favorite way to train. It's just the sense of moving weight through space with nothing helping you or guiding you other than your own body. Man, there's just something about it. That's my favorite way to train by far. You know, if I was back just doing this for myself and not YouTube, I would still have my Titan 4-post rack, a couple of bars and some bumper plates, and I would be as happy as could be. It is really, in my opinion, it is the best way to train. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I talked about those stabilizer muscles before. When you're training with just a plain barbell, it activates your entire body. The squat is now a full body exercise. The deadlift is now a full body exercise. The Romanian deadlift is now a full body. Even the bench press, when done correctly, is kind of a full body exercise. And it requires all of your body to work the way that it was intended to move the weight. Now, can you move as high of a number on the bar as you can with, no, we talked about that already, you can't. But as Massonomics, a really great podcast, says, is that weight is a number, heavy is a feeling. I'm after what it feels like, and barbell training to me just feels so much better and so much more natural. Another benefit of barbell training, speaking of natural, is it allows your body to move through its normal, natural range of motion. There are very few human movements where the bar moves straight up and down like a Smith machine. The squat is one of them, right? But even a squat, when you start getting heavy, sometimes that bar gets off center a little bit, but the squat you can say has a straight bar pattern. Nothing else does. Your bench press has a curved bar pattern. Your deadlift has a little bit of a curved bar pattern. Your RDLs have a little bit of an angular movement pattern. everything. Curls definitely don't have a straight bar movement pattern. So when you talk about how your body moves through space and you talk about training those foundational movement patterns, you can do that a whole lot more effectively when you have a barbell. And one of the giant drawbacks of these all-in-one units is barbell training is an afterthought. So what I would tell you is as you're building your gym, if you think that barbell training is something that you want to focus on, an all-in-one unit is probably not the right thing for you. Not only is the hole spacing on it typically 4 inches, which doesn't allow you to put the safeties in the right spot, doesn't allow you to put the J-hooks in the right spot. It means you have to do some workarounds to try and get the adjustments that you need. You know, if you can't get the safeties in the right spot for the bench press, either it's too high and your bar's clanging into it before you hit full depth, or it's too low and you're gonna die. So you don't want that, right? Nobody wants to die when they're lifting. That would be horrible. With a multifunction trainer, they're just not conducive to barbell work. You can do some barbell work. The cables get in the way of the J-hooks. They get in the way of the barbell. There's all kinds of reasons why doing barbell work on one of these racks is not enjoyable and not nearly as effective as it could be in a standard, naked, basic power rack. And the result of being able to train with a barbell like you should is you're gonna build a lot more strength. If you took 2 twins and you put them into a gym and you said, okay, you're gonna train on this multifunction thing over here and you're gonna train with just a barbell, if I had to bet, I'm gonna bet that the barbell person is going to be stronger. Just overall stronger, able to move more weight in real life and real situations than the person training on the multifunction rack. I would also put money that the person training with the barbell is going to be healthier. And that leads us into the safety thing. Can training on either of these racks be dangerous? Yes. You have to learn to train with good form. And the learning curve for barbell training is longer. But if you take the time to put in at the beginning, the learning curve of learning to lift with a barbell in the correct way, learning to brace correctly, learning to do all the things that you need to do to keep yourself from getting hurt, you've got a lot higher chance of getting hurt by turning around to take something out of your kid's hand in the back seat than you do in training with a barbell. Once you learn how to train with a barbell, it is much safer than just about any other way that you can train, especially if you've got a rack with the safeties, right? Those safeties are there just in case something happens. But with these multifunction units, what I've noticed with the people that I train is they tend to get sloppy. They allow for breaks in form that you don't pay a price for until you get hurt, right? You can start to round your back a little bit because the bar's not gonna move on you on a Smith machine. The cables aren't going to get off balance because you're not bracing your core, right? Whereas with a barbell, it is. And the benefit of barbell training is that it allows you, once you learn form, to train in a much more safe manner because you're being much more conscientious about lifting. It's also, in my opinion, more meditative because of that. I love coming into the gym because it allows me to focus on just the gym. And what I found was really weird is when I'm training on these guys with the Smith machines and the cables, my mind tends to wander and starts thinking about the problems of my everyday life. When I just had a power rack and a barbell, that never happened because 100% of my focus needed to be on lifting correctly, keeping the bar in the correct plane of movement, keeping the bar balanced, maintaining my grip, maintaining my core brace. And you can forget all of that stuff on these multifunction units. So if you're after getting strong and if you're worried about safety, I don't think that going with a multifunction unit is going to get you as strong, and I don't really think that it's any safer than training with a barbell and a rack as long as you put in the time to learn the form correctly in the first place. Another counterintuitive benefit of a regular old barbell with a power rack is it's actually more versatile. By locking the bar into the movement of a Smith machine, by locking the cable to just basically a pull from only certain angles and not just with gravity, you can actually do more movements with a barbell and some dumbbells and a rack than you can on these machines. Like the barbell on a Smith machine is really limited compared to a barbell in real life, right? Like I can't do push presses in here. It's really good upper body exercise. You can't do push presses in it. I mean, I'm 6'6", I can't do them, but you'd have to be like 3'5" to be able to do push presses inside of a multifunction rack like this. I just think that a barbell by itself with the power rack is going to be much more versatile and allow you to do a lot more exercises than you are in one of these. Now for the 2 things that have been really weighing on my mind a lot lately as I look to buy something for my gym. Number one, if I get this multifunction unit, this is it, right? There's not much. Now you might be able to add like a leg curl seat that's kind of janky and works on the cable system, but not really all that well because of the angles, but it's there. You got what you got, right? And for some people, that's all they want. They want to buy this thing, they're happy with what it is, and that's amazing, and that's great for a lot of people, and that's why they outsell regular racks 10 to 1, is people just want to buy one thing, it does what they need, it does enough, right? But for me, I train 6 days a week, soon to be 7. I'm actually gonna up that and train 7 days a week just because I enjoy being in here, especially now that the gym's done. So I like being able to vary my training quite a bit, and I can actually add to that squat rack in 2 ways. And this is the 2 thoughts I've been having. You can either start with a regular squat rack, and then you can add cables to it. You can add a Smith machine. So as I train and I get bored, or as I want to change the way that I train, or I want to add a movement I can't currently do, you can add to those basic racks. And typically what you're going to get is you're going to get a higher quality cable machine. I would take for example, the Rep Fitness Aries over the cable machines in any multifunction system. I think that the Aries is a better system than any of the ones that you can get, including the Force USA that I'm gonna go look at. That Aries is a better system. The stuff that you can add on. Bulletproof Fitness has this really, really cool Smith machine that you can add on to just a 3x3 post rack. And man, that thing looks awesome. I think if I get a rack and I want to add a Smith machine, that thing can pop on. I can do the Smith machine stuff. It pops off. It has a ton of other functions, and it looks to be a higher, if for no other reason that you use your own barbell, which is one really big drawback on a lot of these Smith machines, is you're stuck with the barbell that it comes with. I can use the barbell with the knurling that I like, with the knurl rings that I like. So one benefit is if you go with a basic power rack is you can always add this other stuff to it down the road once you learn to lift with the barbell, which like we said is gonna be more beneficial to you in a lot of different ways. The other thing that you can do, and I'm thinking about this too, which is in this gym I've got plenty of room, so you could go with just a bare rack. And then you can buy something like, we'll stick with Rep Fitness. The Rep Fitness, I think it's called the Adonis, it's a single stack cable unit, super cool. It's got 2-to-1 ratio from the lat pulled, or from the functional trainer portion of it. And what that means for those of you who haven't looked at these, basically there's a weight stack inside of these things. A single stack means there's one weight stack. And let's say that weight stack is 200 pounds. I know it's not on the Adonis, but let's just say 2-to-1 cable means that the feel of that is 100 pounds. It cuts that in half. So for accessory movements, for rear flies, for even cable crossover type movements, it's going to be a little bit longer cable travel, which is important. It's also going to be a little bit smoother. It's also going to allow you to go in shorter weight increment steps. The lat pull down and the low row are a 1-to-1. Those movements you typically can do a lot heavier, especially if you can do body weight pull-ups, you're gonna need a decent amount of weight from that lat pull down to actually get any benefit from it. So it allows you to have those two things. So you could go with a basic rack and then something like that outside. And lots of people make that. Prodigy makes a nice one. Rogue is coming out with one. Bells of Steel makes one that's a pretty good budget price, especially if you wanna do a plate loaded one. There's lots of options for that. But that allows you then to train those specific movements or those exercises on those things and train them a lot more effectively. The lat pull down angle is better than any lat pull down angle on a multifunction trainer. So there's your options. And that brings us to what I started the episode with, which is when you're building your gym, you're gonna have 4 basic configuration options for your rack, and deciding on which of these 4 options you're gonna go with is really gonna help you build the long-term gym that you're gonna love and help you decide what the best thing to go with is. And those 4 options are, you can go with an all-in-one. Like I said, these outsell regular racks 10-to-1. Even though my preference is a standalone rack, I don't want to lead any to believe that these are a bad option. They're not a bad option. I'm driving an hour and a half to go look at the Force USA stuff. I'm gonna spend all day at the store shooting videos on that stuff because I think they are good options. And the reason I'm going to that store is because you've got 2 choices within this. You can go cheap, or you can go nice. There's really not a lot of in-between in these. Even though the Major Fitness is trying to position itself as an in-between, it's not quite the most budget priced. The way that it looks makes it look like a nicer option. It's not. You can either go budget or you can go nice. And if you're gonna go budget on something like this, I really like the RitFit M1. If you haven't watched my review on that and you're in the market for something like this, make sure you check it out. It doesn't look as flashy for sure, but the money that you spend will go into its performance The Smith machine on this is miles better than the one on the Major Fitness. Go back and watch those videos, you'll see all about that. Or if you're going to go nice, then go nice, right? Go with the Force USA. There's a company advertising that called Jacked Up Fitness. I'm not sure about it, but it looks nice. I'm not anybody out there who's experienced with it. Let me know in the comments what you think about that Jacked Up Fitness brand. I've been seeing them advertise a lot, which typically to me is a red flag, but companies got to advertise, right? So let me know what you think about them. There's a few different companies making those nicer. Body Solid's another one that makes some really nice all-in-one functional trainer type stuff. I'll be going to their warehouse to shoot some videos here not too distant future as well, so look for that coming up. But that's your first option, right? Is to just go with this. Your second option is to go with just a raw squat rack, and that's it. And I think that, you know, if you have done barbell training before, you know this. If you haven't, you'll learn this really quickly. It's a very enjoyable way to train. It's very, very possible that you could find yourself training in just that basic rack and go, wow, this is all I need. I didn't need a leg press and a hack squat and a cable machine and a Smith machine, and I'm happy with just a rack. Like I said, if it was just me on a budget and I didn't have a YouTube channel, that's probably how I would train. It's just a regular, I love training that way. It's just, there's something about it. It's a skill. You know, I didn't mention that before, and barbell training is a skill, and one of the ways that I got myself to get into the habit of training regularly was, instead of looking at completing a program or losing a certain amount of weight or trying to hit a number on a bar, I looked at it as a skill thing. I looked at it as kind of like going golfing or going to the driving range. I came into the gym every day for a long time, and I still look at it this way, is I want to get really good at squatting. So I would record myself on my phone, and I would watch it back, and I would post it in forums and get feedback and work on my foot position and work on, you know, how much my hips bent and how much I was bent over and every little aspect. And to me, that made the workouts go by a lot quicker. And it was a lot more, like every time it was squat day, I looked forward to leg day, because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work on these few things in the squat, I'm gonna get better. And I'm telling you, if you just, for people out there who are afraid to pick up a barbell and you're thinking, a Smith machine's safer, trust me, a barbell it's a really, really fun, enjoyable way to train, and it's gonna keep you coming back for more, and it's gonna keep your head, like I said, in the training. So again, can you tell I like barbell training? So let's go on. That's your second option. You could just go with that. Your third option is you could go with that, the same thing, and then at some point down the road, start adding stuff to your rack. You can put a Smith machine on your rack. You can put, so if you go, hey, I like the barbell training, Tim, but I'm not as big of a dork about it as you are, then you could add that other stuff down the road, and you'd have a way to do all the stuff that you want to do, and you're going to get higher quality stuff, right? Like I said, that Bulletproof Fitness Smith machine is going to be a better Smith machine than anything built into these all-in-one trainers. The Rep cable machine, and look, lots of people make them. I know I keep saying Rep, but that's just the one I've been looking at. Bells of Steel makes a nice add-on cable machine. There's a bunch of people that make them. Rogue makes some add-on functional trainers. So everybody is making these. In wait a year and everybody will have at least one out. And you're going to get a higher quality cable system than you will on these all-in-one things. And that's another option. Now, I'm not a huge fan of packing a ton of, what I've noticed on these is it starts to feel really crowded really quick. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're building a rack that's gonna support that stuff. But the cool thing about buying a rack, as one of the companies that I reached out to recently said, or maybe it was one of the YouTube folks, they said that, hey, the nice thing about buying a nice rack is it's like an erector set for adults. You can add, change, build your own stuff. You can make any configuration. You can buy cross members and braces and extra bolts and all this stuff and make some, you can really make it into whatever you want. And that's a nice thing. And by the way, the next episode, I've got some really cool information for you. The next episode, just so you know, so again, subscribe so you don't miss this, is why buy a nice one. I've got a lot of people who talk about in the comments, buy nice or buy twice or buy once, cry once. So I actually went out to a bunch of companies and a bunch of people who own nice racks and said, okay, what do I get if I spend more on a rack? Like, what's the reason? What are the actual benefits other than just buy a nice one? What does buy a nice one mean? So that's coming up next episode. I'm excited about that episode as well. But back to this, if you buy a standalone rack and you add those accessories to it, you're going to get a much better experience and much better gear in the long term. And it's going to allow you to buy things over time. You can start with a nice 3x3 4-post rack for a pretty low price, and then save up and buy that other stuff down the road and train for a really long time, like I said, on just that rack. So that's the third way you can do it. The fourth way that you can do it is you can buy yourself a nice rack enjoy your barbell training, and then buy other machines to do the other stuff. If you want to do leg presses, buy a leg press machine. If you want to do, if you want a functional trainer, buy a functional trainer. If you want to do lat pull downs and low rows, buy a lat pull down low row machine. So you can do that. Now that's going to cost you a lot more in the long run, but that's going to be, if you're looking for what's the best way to train, that's going to end up with the best gym. If I was to set up all 4 of those gyms, and I said, okay, I've got a gym with a multifunction, I've got a gym with just a squat rack, I've got a gym with a squat rack with a bunch of stuff bolted onto it, and I've got a gym with a squat rack and a bunch of machines, and you can come train in any one of them, 100 out of 100 people are going to come train in the one that's got the squat rack and the bunch of machines. It is definitively the better way to set up your gym. It is definitively the way to spend the price of several cars on your gym, which is why I'm having second thoughts on it, but it is the best way. So those are your 4 options. And if before you buy something for your gym, you really think about, okay, I want to train those 6 fundamental movement patterns, right? How am I going to do that best? And how am I going to be happiest doing that? What's going to get me into the gym most often? And again, if a multifunction trainer is going to do that for you, and you know, hey, I'm going to use that, I'm never going to take the time to learn that other stuff you were talking about, then this is what you should buy. But think about that. How are you going to enjoy training the most, and which of those 4 options is going to be the best for not only your training, but also the space you have in your gym, in your house. Some people, like we talked about before, only this is going to fit between the washing machine and the big wheels, right? So you're not going to be able to do a bunch of these other options, but think about what fits your space, and then think about what fits your budget. So hopefully that helps out, and I ask you guys for help for me, because I'm literally, as you can tell, I'm literally thinking out loud as I record this episode. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm not sure whether I want to go with a nicer multifunction, because I've kind of enjoyed having the Smith machine and the cables and all that stuff in one, and then maybe just get just a raw squat rack separate, or maybe just get a nice enough functional trainer where I can actually do some barbell workout in the front of it. Or if I want to go with just the squat rack again. What I'm really leaning towards though, and I really like you guys' opinion on this, is do I go with a squat rack and then look to bolt a bunch of stuff onto it down the road, because there's just so much stuff that's coming out. I can't imagine that this 1st or 2nd generation of stuff is the penultimate thing. I guarantee you that companies are coming out. Bulletproof is a great example. Prime Fitness is another one. Everybody's coming out with stuff, right? Rogue's coming out with some really cool bolt-on stuff. Do I buy a rack and then wait a year and see what's on the market and then bolt a bunch of stuff onto it? Or do I buy a rack and then buy that rep Adonis? I really, really like it. It's expensive. It's not as expensive as some of the other options, but I like the idea of being able to have the weight stack at the 2 different pulley ratios, but I'm completely undecided right now. So it would be great if any of you guys have experience with that stuff to let me know in the comments. What do you guys think is the best way to go? A lot of you guys out there have this stuff already, so anybody else that's looking, let me know in the comments. As usual, I'll pin a comment with all the best information in it so that this becomes a resource for folks trying to buy a rack. Hopefully I haven't rambled all over the place too much. Like I said, I'm really literally thinking about this out loud and trying to make a decision for myself, so I figured I'd make it into an episode that hopefully helps you guys as well. But like I said, let me know what you think. And if you've watched the episode this long and haven't hit the like button, as I always ask, hit that like button. And if you watched the episode this long and you didn't like it, as I always ask, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. But leave me a comment, let me know why you would watch a 40-minute podcast and not like it. But otherwise, hopefully all the people who are still here, I really appreciate you guys. Hopefully you liked the episode. I'm looking forward to the next one. And until the next podcast, I'm Tim with GymCrafter.